Everyone, it's Victoria Menzies here. Firstly, just to let you know that the session is being recorded and it will be available hopefully later in the week for you. If you would like to share posts in the chat, please do if you've got any questions, and we will be moderating that chat session throughout. I would now like to call on our Vice-Chancellor and President, Professor Carolyn Evans, who is a Rhodes Scholar as well as being a Senior Fulbright Scholar, to open our event. So Carolyn, if you could please turn your microphone on and your camera, that would be appreciated. Thank you. I'll hand over to you now, and I'll let you know if your microphone is working.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Hope that is working.
That's working, thank you.
Terrific. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking some time to join us today, and I hope you find it a really useful and interesting experience. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of all the various lands on which we meet today? I'm on the lands of the Turrbal and the Yagara people, and pay our respects to elders past and present, and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, staff or alumni who are joining us tonight. Can I also thank Victoria, and somebody's not on mute, just getting a little bit of noise there, thanks. Can I also thank Victoria and the Honours College who've done a fantastic job of helping to prepare for tonight, but also, and we'll come to this, really there to help and support you if you decide that you do want to apply for one of these scholarships. And also thank those special guests who are joining us to talk about particular scholarships, and especially those of you who might be joining us from quite unfriendly time zones. So we're very grateful to those of you who are coming from around the world today. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce this session tonight. When I came to Griffith, Victoria and I sat down and had a bit of a talk, and we said, look, Griffith's got such terrific people, and we really want to make sure that they can fulfil their potential, that they are recognised for what they can do, and that they have the support and the encouragement and the confidence to have a try for things like these prestigious scholarships. So, you know, our academics and our researchers and our students have been amazing in creating the sort of society that we can all be proud of. We've got award-winning teachers, we've got research that's ranked among some of the top in the world, we've got students who've really done amazing things. And that's increasingly being recognised as our students and our staff and our alumni have the confidence to tell the world about what they've done and what they might be able to do further with the support of one of these scholarships. So in 2020, 6 members of the Griffith community, among them alumni, staff and students, were awarded a Fulbright scholarship to study in the US. Now that's obviously proved a little bit more difficult, but I know they're still on track to do that probably next year now. And 9 students were awarded a New Colombo Plan Fellowship. And that's in fact the highest number in the country. We have more New Colombo Plan Fellowships than any other university, which is terrific. Now, I've been involved on both sides of the table with scholarships. I've been an applicant for quite a number of scholarships myself, and I've been on or around selection committees for a number of different scholarships. I've been a successful applicant, that's the stuff that's on the CV, and I have been rejected by many different scholarships in many different ways for many different reasons over the years. And I'm going to come back to that. This is not something that for most of you should get involved in doing unless you can take a few knockbacks. So there are a few things that I would like to share with you at a bit of a general level before we get on and start looking in some detail at particular scholarships. The first thing is to think about the process and what you can get out of just applying for these scholarships, whether you're successful or not. Now, of course, yeah, we'd all prefer to win the scholarships than to not win the scholarships. Of course, you know, that's only human. It's great. It gives you a great opportunity, sets you up in all sorts of ways. But the reality is there are many more talented and able people than there are scholarships to go around. And it can be a pretty big blow when you put your application in and put your heart and soul into it and get knocked back. And again, I'm going to say, been there, done that. I know that feeling. But when you are on the other side of the table on a selection panel, you know it is more of an art than a science. You know there are some incredible people who go on, and I've watched them go on to do absolutely amazing things, who don't, for whatever reason, get the scholarship at that point in time. But I've also talked to a lot of people who haven't necessarily gone on to achieve the result that they'd have been hoping for, who've told me about how great the process has been. And why is that? Well, in our sort of busy lives, we're always just thinking about what we've got to do today and tomorrow and trying to get through all those sorts of things. When you apply for a scholarship, you've got to step back for a moment. You've got to think seriously and thoughtfully about what you have achieved. And I'm going to come back to that in a few moments. And also seriously and thoughtfully about what you want to achieve. You know, what is it that you want to be doing in 5 years' time, and what do you need to get there? How might a scholarship help you do that? How might further study help you do that, or some time overseas? It also makes you think about what you can contribute, what you want to contribute to the world, and that can be invaluable. If you get shortlisted, you often get to meet some of the other applicants who can be very interesting people. Indeed, people have formed some great friendship with other applicants. And if you get to interview stage, you'll often be interviewed by some really amazing people who've done very interesting things in their lives. So that experience can be a terrific experience in and of itself. You do need some resilience going into this process. As I say, I know just many great people who've applied for scholarships who haven't been successful, or who've had to go on and apply for a lot of scholarships and experience a lot of knockbacks before they were successful. So I would encourage you to think about Plan B and Plan C and Plan D as you're going through tonight. You might think, oh, I'd love to be a Rhodes Scholar, I'd love to go to Oxford, or really hope that I can get a Monash scholarship and go to Harvard. And that's great. You know what Plan A is, really have a go and go hard for that. But recognise that the more limited, the fewer options that you have, the more likelihood is that they won't turn out exactly as you want. So what I suggest instead is that you focus on what you want to do with your life, what you want to achieve. I want to make a major breakthrough in theoretical physics. I want to change the way midwives think about engaging with refugee communities. I want to become a barrister who's capable of taking cases on human rights to the various United Nations tribunals. What is it you want to do? What difference do you want to make? And then what will you need to get there? And you will never just need a Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford. You might need another degree. You might need to engage with a community. You might need some time overseas. A scholarship might be one way of getting there, but there are lots of great options in Australia too. So even if your preference is to go overseas, what might you be able to do here in Australia if that's not possible, or if it's not possible immediately? This might be the scholarship you'd most love to win, but what other scholarships might also help you get on the path that you want to get on? And I'd also encourage you not to just think about what you can get out of getting a scholarship, but importantly, what you bring to the table. What's your talents? What have you done? What have you already contributed to the world? And what leadership skills do you have? What vision do you have? Now, that can be hard sometimes. I think it's not a normal part of perhaps the way Australians engage with the world, and people at Griffith tend, which is a lovely quality, to be fairly modest, not necessarily wanting to blow our own trumpet. But you don't have to be arrogant or pushy in doing this. It's just being serious and thoughtful and making a case for what you've achieved already in your life, and also what you want to give back through obtaining this scholarship. And the people on the scholarships committees are going to be thinking to themselves, well, in 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 years' time, when we're writing this person's obituary and they say they got this scholarship and then they made us incredibly proud. They really, by giving this person a scholarship, helped them on their life's journey, and that person then went on to help many others. They've made a difference to the community, whether that might be local or Australian or global. They've made a difference to the way we think about the world. They've made a difference to other people's lives. And again, if you keep that focus not so much on what do I deserve to get, but what can I give back? What is it that I want to contribute? I think you'll find the experience can be an extremely rewarding one. Now, here at Griffith, we really are committed to trying to help you in that process. And let me again thank Victoria and the Honours College team who've ramped up the support. And I know so many colleagues and students and alumni have really benefited from that. Do reach out to them. They do an absolutely fantastic job. I also want to thank and acknowledge our fabulous community of Griffith Scholarship alumni and staff who've been there to generously share their insights I've done mock interviews with people, have looked over applications, and many of whom are here tonight, and they're going to give us the benefit of their wisdom in that. Your success is our success. It's fabulous for this university when our students, when our graduates, when our staff win these awards. This is something we feel incredibly proud of, and it helps to build our reputation. And when you go overseas and you show people at these universities around the world what Griffith alumni are capable of doing, what Griffith staff are capable of doing, that builds our reputation globally. And it's the most substantial and real way in which we grow our reputation, is to show the world just how good Griffith people can be. We want connections and networks of people within Australia who've been involved in the selection process and outside Australia who meet our alumni through these scholarships to say, well, that Griffith University must be something, because they have some pretty amazing folk who work there or who studied there. So thank you all for taking some time out of your busy lives tonight, whether it be to present or to listen. It's very easy for all of us to get caught up in the present moment and not spend time thinking about our future, not trying to think about what vision we might have about how we could change things up. So congratulations to you all for taking a little bit of time to think about that. I do wish you the very best, whether you decide to apply in the near future or not. If you do decide to apply, we will try and support you all the way. If you don't, we hope we still found this information session interesting and informative, and it might perhaps make you think a little bit about what you do want to achieve over these next couple of years and how you might best go about doing that. So thanks very much, Victoria, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that. And I would also like to emphasise Carolyn's comment about we have a fantastic community at Griffith, and I've been in this role about 3 years supporting, this is I think the 4th year, supporting people through this process of applying for prestigious scholarships, and we're quickly seeing it grow. So, and the reason that it's growing is because we have this amazing community, which is really for me what makes me very proud of being part of Griffith, that we can reach out and people will immediately say, yes, I'd love to assist in any way I can. So we do have a great community, which is growing, of people who are there to support you with the applications, to support you with conversations, to support you with interview prep, just depending where you are. But as Carolyn mentioned, really it is that process that is so important. Now, my role here is really as just the contact officer. I'm a little bit, I guess, the glue of bringing it all together, and I've got a fabulous team of people with the Honours College, Kim Holmes and Fabiana and Kim Burry has just started with us, who are also there to assist. So please do reach out, and we are happy to try and support you through the process, which I do appreciate is complex. So tonight is going to be very, very fast, and I apologise, there'll be some repetition because some of you are going to be here just to listen to particular scholarship programs, and we've got presenters from those scholarship teams also here to talk about the scholarships tonight. Each of them are recorded. The recording will be available later on, so I'm going to be asking people to turn on their microphones and cameras. So apologies for the repetition for those of you who are staying all the way through. So with that, I would like to ask Alex McLaren from the Australian American Fulbright Commission to please turn your microphone on and your camera on, and I will hand it over to you, Alex, to share about the Fulbright.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Victoria. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Alex.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'd love to talk to you all about Fulbright scholarships this evening. So I'll just give you a quick summary of the program, then we'll speak to some of our Griffith affiliated scholars who've joined us. So Fulbright scholarships are essentially your ticket to study or research anywhere in the United States. A little bit about the history of the program. It was created following the Second World War by a junior senator from Arkansas, Senator J. William Fulbright, who had this fantastic idea to create an educational exchange program through sale of surplus war armaments left over after World War II. His own experiences as a Rhodes Scholar taught him the transformational power of international exchange, and his vision was to reduce the chance of future conflict by creating these two-way exchanges between the United States and other countries. And since then, the program's grown to become one of the largest in the world. In Australia, we've operated for 70 years. It was created originally through the first treaty between the two countries, predating ANZUS by a couple of years. In Australia, we offer over 100 scholarships each year, and they come in 4 different categories. There's postgraduate, which I'll talk about in a moment, postdoctoral for anyone who's completed their PhD in the past 5 years to undertake research for 3 to 10 months. Scholar awards are aimed at more sort of mid-career academics or professionals to undertake shorter-term research projects in the US for 3 to 4 months. And then finally, the Distinguished Chair Scholarship, which is a very prestigious award specifically to undertake research in agriculture and life sciences at Kansas State University. So postgraduate scholarships for any Australian graduate students who wish to undertake full US master's degrees, so up to 2 years, or for Australian PhD students who want to complete a period of research towards their PhD as a visiting student researcher, so from 4 to 10 months. Also for Australians who are interested in undertaking full doctoral degrees, but only under a specific program, the Fulbright Future program, which you can inquire about if you contact our office. So the scholarships are available in all disciplines, so anything from STEM, arts, humanities, even creative and performing arts. So a quick look at the postgraduate scholarships catalogue. These are all the awards available this year. I won't go through each of them because there's information on our website, but I'm just I'll mention in each category, postgraduate, postdoctoral, and scholar award, there are a variety of awards that you can be considered for with the one application. So check out, make sure you peruse our scholarships catalogues, look for all the awards that you're eligible for, and you can nominate to be considered for multiple awards with the one application. So the benefits of a Fulbright scholarship, they're valued between $30,000 and all the way up to $500,000, depending on the tuition costs for your degree and the time you'd like to spend in the US. It includes a generous living stipend, international airfare, tuition allowance for most degree-seeking students, and we offer these fantastic university placement services for any degree-seeking students. So you don't actually need to apply to a US university prior to applying for a Fulbright scholarship. They also include insurance coverage and access to a really fantastic network of international Fulbright alumni, and that's for the rest of your life. It's a really highly engaged network, as Professor Evans mentioned. And we also, unique to Fulbright, we offer a comprehensive support for visa applications, and we're kind of with you every step of the way of your application and scholarship journey. So in terms of eligibility, the scholarships are just open to Australian citizens. You have to have citizenship, not for permanent residence. You can be a dual citizen with anywhere but the US. You also must have an undergraduate degree, but there's no age limit, and they're open to any field and any host institution in the US. Like most grant programs, the selection criteria looks at academic and professional excellence, but it's not limited to that. We also look at ambassadorial skills. It's as much a cultural exchange as it is an academic exchange. So we're looking for very well-rounded, adaptable ambassadors to represent Australia and the Fulbright program. An important aspect is the relevance of your proposed program to the US. So when writing your application, you really need to emphasize why this particular program of study or research must be undertaken in the US. And the selection committees also look at the potential outcomes or impact of your proposed study or research. So the timeline, applications are open from January to July each year, so they're open right now. They'll close on July 6th this year. Selected applicants will be invited for interview in August, September, and everyone finds out the outcome of their application by the end of the year. In terms of the timeline for when you commence your program, you must commence between July of next year and June of the following year. So there's a 1 year lead-in time. If you apply this year, you need to commence after July next year and before June of 2023. For more info on how to apply and tips and advice for applying, check out our website. You can jump on there and look at information about all the different awards you might be eligible for. There are FAQs. There's a comprehensive video tutorial on how to apply and advice for different applicants. And you can check out profiles of all of our alumni to find someone who's in your discipline and and see if the Fulbright scholarship is right for you. You can also follow us on any of our social media channels. Send us an email or give us a buzz at our office if you'd like to discuss your application. So we've got with us two Griffith affiliated Fulbright scholars. We've got Professor Susan Harris-Rimmer, who is the 2021 Fulbright Professional Scholar in Australia-US Alliance Studies, funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She'll be headed to Georgetown University for her scholarship and will be focused on human rights law and public policy. We've also got Danielle Hill, who is a 2020 Fulbright Future Scholar, who will be headed to the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory at the University of Georgia. And her focus will be ecotoxicology. So I'd love to ask each of them about their experiences with the application. Firstly, Professor Rimmer, could you tell us a little bit about your how you applied for the scholarship and why you decided to go to Georgetown University?
Sure. So I hope you can hear me okay, everyone. Yes?
Yes, Sue.
Yes, that's great. I actually planned this for a long time. It was part of a longer term career plan for me. I was very lucky to win an academic fellowship with the Australian Research Council called a Future Fellowship a few years ago. I did some visiting fellow opportunities as an academic with Oxford University and the Graduate Institute in Geneva. And I found it a very enriching experience. I did also get to visit the US, and I thought I really want to spend a bit more time and have a bit more depth in some of these relationships, and I want to do a project that I can only do if I immerse myself in this particular institution. So I planned my attack on the Fulbright over a kind of a 3-year period. And I was very focused on Georgetown because it is the best. If you're a kind of an insider political kind of person, that's where you want to go. It's the Washington DC scene. They're very politically and policy focused, and they've got great links with the State Department. And it's exactly the kind of thing that appealed to me. So you really have to think about where you want to go, why it's a unique place for you, and how it kind of makes sense that you're obsessed with various things, and so you would want to go to that place. So yeah, I would, I feel like these scholarships are a big commitment that you have to take seriously. So do your research, like think hard, and it actually doesn't matter. Like, don't care. I mean, the city is important. Everywhere you go is important, but it's more about the place and the people in the place and who you want to do work with. That should be your primary consideration.
Absolutely agree with that. Thanks so much, Susan. Danielle, could you tell us a little bit about your proposal at the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory in Georgia?
Yep, so hopefully you can hear me okay now.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Danielle.
Cool. Yeah, so kind of a bit of a background for my PhD and why I decided to apply. I'm actually a remote student working in Sydney at ANSTO, the Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation. So I'm looking at how waste from coal mining and nuclear activity affects aquatic animals like frogs and insects. So particularly looking at what happens when they're exposed to metals and when they go through metamorphosis, what kind of effect does this have as well, since they undergo such great change. So when I started my PhD, my supervisors were in touch with a researcher at the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory. So that was Dr. Beasley there. And at the Savannah River site, there's actually been a lot of coal and nuclear waste contamination, mostly from the 80s, that's still pretty much just sitting there. So we're all keen to have a collaboration, since my PhD plan fit in well with the research they do at Savannah. And it made for a perfect field case study to support the lab-based work I'm doing at ANSTO as well. So the question then came of how was I going to fund this research trip to make it all happen? And that's where Fulbright came in. So one of my supervisors actually suggested looking into Fulbright and making the application, as we knew that they could provide the kind of support I'd need to undertake the 5-month study, as well as providing great networking and career opportunities. So I had actually only just started my application when I attended this same session last year. So it was a good way to get a start into this great info and insight into the process, and it's definitely a good place to start. So yeah, getting in touch with the Honours College was really helpful as well. Got extra eyes on my application after my supervisors had a look. And it was a great way to make sure my application hit the right line between going into the kind of detail I needed to showcase my research and that it was feasible, and making sure it still had that kind of big picture context and appeal. As I had like a specific project and collaborator I was looking to work with, it was also really helpful to have their feedback and extensive discussions with them, as they also then provided a letter of invitation for my application too, and really showed how well our research was going to tie in together. So yeah, another thing I found really helpful was getting in touch with past recipients, particularly those in similar situations to me. So in my case, I had a look through the last couple of years of recipients and got in touch with others that had projects in environmental science or similar, and that were also all only planning to do a short time of their PhD in the US rather than applying for, say, the full PhD, as I found the style of proposal was a little bit different between the different applications. So yeah, that was great. I found they're all really happy to share their thoughts or their research proposals, and stayed in touch with quite a few of them through the interview process and after. So it was really helpful to get their insight on the whole application. So they're definitely a good resource that can make a difference. So yeah, now I'm just at the stage of fine-tuning my project and timeline. We've got orientation coming up next week via Zoom. And thankfully, my plan was always to head to South Carolina in February of next year. So that's all still on track. So I think we've got a Q&A now for any questions for myself or the other presenters about Fulbright. And I'll put my email in the chat in a moment as well. So feel free to get in touch that way too.
Thank you, Danielle. So I'll pose the questions to you, and I think the first one is actually for you, Alex, and it's, are Fulbright scholarships only accessible for those undertaking a PhD in their areas?
In terms of undertaking a PhD in their areas, so it's open to anyone. You can undertake a PhD in any particular area. I suppose if you're undertaking a PhD in an area that you haven't studied before, you may not be able to make a particularly strong application, but you'd still be eligible to apply. I'm not quite sure if that's what the question was asking, but
Labour, does that answer your question? Sort of.
I mean, yeah, you can undertake a PhD or a master's degree in any area. I'd recommend when writing your application. Sorry, go ahead.
I suspect that Labour is, because she's mentioned just PhD in their areas. So there are four. From my experience, Fulbright is quite complex. There are many different ways you can do Fulbright. And so from having conversations with people, I think one of the challenges is that they don't recognise you can do it as a PhD post your undergrad. You can do it as part of your PhD, which is the 3 months to 10 months. You can do it as a postdoc and you've finished your PhD, and then you can also do it as a fellow, which is what Sue has done, which is your expertise in your area. Does that answer the question?
There is a master's option. There's the master's in public policy as well.
That's right, there is a master's as well, but there are many options.
So a postgraduate scholarship can fund a 2-year, up to 2-year master's, or research towards your Australian PhD or a full PhD. If you haven't undertaken a master's, then I'd recommend going for a master's program to begin with.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so the next question we have is from Shay. And so Shay says, so for the Fulbright scholarships, are applications generally submitted as a final year undergrad? That is, if you intend to study a postgraduate degree immediately after graduating. So again, this is one for you, Alex.
Yep. So no, yes, we do have applicants who submit it as a final year undergrad. I think most applicants give it a little bit more lead-in time. You might do an honours year and then consider undertaking a master's. It's not out of the ordinary for a final year undergrad to submit an application, but you will be competing with people who may have an honours or even a master's under their belts already.
Thank you for that, Alex. So I was just going to respond to that too, because we did have one, Joshua Russell, 2 years ago was a recipient, and he did just a 3-year undergraduate degree. However, he had done quite a substantial amount of research parallel with his degree. So he had a number of publications and could really strongly demonstrate that he was out of the ordinary, and so he has said he had publications and things. So yes, you can, but normally you would have more.
Yeah, so there's another question from Zara. Do you need to know exactly what master's program and school you want to go to? No, we have this fantastic placement service in the US that can help you sort of navigate the complex US admission system. They can help you find degrees that you're might be interested in. It's good to know the landscape, so it's good to do a bit of research beforehand so that in your application you might mention a couple of programs that you're interested in, but no, you don't need to have decided on a program prior to applying. I've got a quick question for Susan and Danielle, just because they have quite different disciplines, you know, human rights law and public policy and ecotoxicology, two quite disparate disciplines. I'd love to know from each of them what part of the application they found the most challenging.
It's a tough one.
I found the personal statement quite challenging, but I think it goes to the advice the Vice Chancellor gave you. There's a lot of great people going for these scholarships, and you have to be memorable as well as, like, everyone's bright, everyone's smart, so you have to actually be memorable and tell a story about why this, why now, right? But I found the personal statement, I thought I will be very authentic about my own journey as someone who's not your usual human rights lawyer. I'm from quite a poor background from Coonabarabran in New South Wales, and I told that story in my personal statement. And, you know, I just thought you should always tell your story with as much authenticity as possible. That would be my advice. And understand the values of the scheme.
Now, I'm going to have to wrap it up there because we're 5:32 and we're on a really tight timeline. Danielle, I know you've got comments, but can I just stress that both Danielle and Susan are here to reach out. Alex is fabulous. He's also here and very happy to answer any questions. If you wanted to go offline and reach out and ask them some questions offline, please feel free to do so. So I would like to take this now to opportunity to say thank you so much, Alex and Danielle and Sue, for sharing all of your insights. They are truly invaluable, particularly because you're from such different areas. So thank you very, very much. And I now would like to call on Professor Stan Hearn, who is the Queensland State Secretary for Rhodes Scholarships. And if you could please turn your microphone and your camera on, please, Stan, that would be appreciated. And I will say again that this session is being recorded for people. Thank you. Stan,
hello.
I think I
can you see me now?
I can see you and I can hear you. Thank you, Stan.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Okay, so as Victoria has mentioned, my name's Stan Hearn. I'm the State Secretary for the Queensland Rhodes Scholarships. I come from the institution across the river, QUT. And the Rhodes are the most prestigious scholarships in the world, arguably, dating back to 1903. There are 100 scholars elected every year, so there are about 300 scholars in residence at any one particular time. I'm not going to talk you through all of these slides because the slide deck is available and you can easily read things. But what I do want to emphasize right at the outset the key contacts. So for you at Griffith, David Elwood is your network advisor, and that's his email over there, d.elwood. So he might be your first point of contact, but also feel free to email either me or the state administrator, Mandy MacDonald, at Rhodes Queensland at qut.edu.au. We also have a web page which answers a lot of frequently asked questions, but also the Rhodes House has a very impressive website, and they encourage you to go there when you start your application. So do also look out for the Rhodes website. Okay, so the Rhodes Scholarship is an amazing institution, and it is absolutely transformative for those of us that have been lucky enough to be elected as Rhodes Scholars. I would like to give you 4 reasons as to why this is transformative. A management consultant friend of mine once told me that you're only allowed to give 3 reasons for anything. So in a final act of rebelling against authority, I'm going to give you 4. The first reflects remarks which have been made by your Vice-Chancellor and also echoed by the previous Fulbright presentation, and that is the application process itself can be transformative. The personal statement for the Rhodes Scholarship in particular gets you to stop and think about your vision and your ambitions. And clarity comes with reflection, I think. A very wise man once told me that we are called human beings, not human doings. And I think over the years, we've kind of forgotten that in the quest for productivity above all things, productivity and efficiency. We're so busy doing things that we forget sometimes just to be. And I think the process of application allows you to be for a while and to think and to pen some of your thoughts. In addition to that, if you're lucky enough to be shortlisted, you'll meet some incredible people, both your peers as applicants and also the people in the selection committee. And you'll also have the opportunity to visit Government House, because the Governor of Queensland is traditionally the chairman of our selection committee. The second reason why you'll find this transformative, if you're lucky enough to be elected, is of course you'll go to Oxford. Now, Oxford isn't just one of the main universities in the world. For the last 4 years in a row, the Times Higher has made Oxford the best university in the world. And that's something which you should think about very carefully. Some of the finest minds in the world are going to teach you. But more than that, you're going to be at the center of your discipline more often than not. Now, this is not trying to decry the excellent research which is done everywhere else, but in terms of your discipline, you'll find more often than not that Oxford has a central role to play in shaping the way people think about that discipline. So, for example, I started in 1983 in Oxford, and that was actually the birth of my particular discipline, which is financial econometrics. And now, almost 40 years on, I can think about the fact that I was actually there when the discipline started. It's an amazing thing to reflect on. The library where I spent most of my time working was actually built in 1126. It was St. Peter in the East in Oxford, and it was built by one of William the Conqueror's main generals on land ceded to him after 1066. So just walking in there in the morning at 9 o'clock and sitting down in your desk and looking up at the ceiling was something which still stays with me to this day. So that's the second. The third reason I would suggest that it's transformative is because of the people that you meet. And these are your peers. You'll meet with a wide variety. You meet a wide variety of people from different parts of the world in terms of the Rhodes Scholarships. Rhodes House has become a center for all of the activity which the warden encourages. In my time, Rhodes House was kind of more or less an empty place where you went once or twice in your career, but now it's a a vibrant intellectual community. And the people that you meet and work with stay with you for the rest of your life. I remember firing up Rolls-Royce engines with an engineer friend of mine at midnight in his laboratory. I also remember a young man who was an astrophysicist walking around mumbling about trying to find the third integral of motion. I always wondered where he'd got to, but now I find he's actually Vice President Industry and Engagement at Griffith, and we'll be talking to you a little bit later on. So I think the third integral probably won't be found tonight, but perhaps he'll be able to shed some more light from a different perspective. And finally, you'll be thrust into a melting pot of cultures. Not only is Britain itself now a melting pot for cultures from all over the world, but within 2 hours flight from Oxford, you could be anywhere in the old world in Europe and speaking a language which is completely foreign to the one that you spend most of your time writing and thinking in. So not only does the trust encourage this kind of behavior, but also provides a generous personal stipend of about 30,000 Australian dollars to help you not only with your living expenses, but also your travel plans. So transformative in the extreme. There are 4 excellent reasons why you should be thinking about the Rhodes scholarships, and I'll draw your attention finally to the picture on your screen, who's our Rhodes Scholar for going up this year for 2021. Justin Clark, who was formerly a football player and had to rebuild his life after concussion. An amazing story. He will be going to Magdalen College. And as I said, all these slides are available in the deck, so I'm not going to talk you through it. The things that you should just be aware of is that you have to be an Australian citizen and you must have completed 2 years of schooling at an Australian secondary school. So that's the only thing that I really want to emphasize. We're also lucky enough to have with us tonight Beth Hamilton, who was the last Griffith Rhodes Scholar in 2018, who's been at the forefront of fighting COVID in the UK, and I'm sure she's got some amazing stories to tell you. So I'll hand over to you now, Beth.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Beth.
Yes, great. Thanks, Dan, for that really lovely introduction. I think you've sold Oxford. Don't have much left convincing to do. But yeah, I'm Beth. I studied at Griffith at the Gold Coast campus from 2011 through to 2016. So I did medical science followed by medicine. Then went up to Townsville for my internship and residency year. And at the end of my intern year in 2017, yes, applied for the Rhodes Scholarship and was awarded the Queensland Rhodes Scholarship in the following year in 2018. So I'll just give you a bit of background about my kind of why I applied for the scholarship, how I found Oxford so far, and just a couple of notes of advice, and then leave some time for questions. But yeah, I've had a long-standing interest in public health and applied for the Rhodes Scholarship, as I said, at the end of my intern year to pursue a master's in global health science and epidemiology at Oxford University. So I went over there at the end of 2018 and just had the most wonderful eye-opening time. I was in a small class of about 25 people from 12 different countries. We had this intensive hands-on course where we learned all about the global burden of disease, how to understand, appraise, and perform reliable research, with the opportunity to do a 3-month research dissertation at the end of the master's. I initially was planning on staying for 2 years, but I'm still studying. I ended up going on to pursue a DPhil or a PhD in population health, looking at the burden of chronic hepatitis B in China. And I'm about halfway through that at the moment. The Rhodes community itself is really vibrant, really welcoming. As Stan said, there's about 100 scholars each year from all over the world. And Rhodes House is very active, so people refer to Rhodes House as their second home. They're always holding various events, reading groups, interesting talks, yoga sessions. There's a lot of student-driven societies and advocacy groups and reading groups. And then kind of broader than Rhodes House itself, you have the Oxford community and then your college community. And I've been involved in my Middle Common Room committee, the AFL club, tried rowing, which was cold and difficult and no longer doing rowing, but it was still fun. Studied in libraries that are hundreds of years old. And as Stan also mentioned, the people have really made the experience for me. Just meeting people from so many different disciplines, having kind of had my head in this medicine bubble for the previous 6 years, it was really eye-opening to be sitting across the dinner table with someone who's asking me, you know, philosophical questions that I, you know, didn't really understand, or you know, talking about some mathematical or physics concept that I, you know, they could have been speaking a different language for all I knew. But yeah, and I have made some lifelong friends from all over the world, and I know it's kind of one of the most valuable things to take away. The last year obviously has been a bit of a challenge with the pandemic, but it was also incredible to be working in Oxford. I got to do some work on the COVID wards there, and was involved with some of the research that was going on. So being on the forefront of that at, you know, one of the best universities in the world was also a really invaluable experience. I'm back in Australia now, actually studying remotely for a bit, so very grateful to be home. My advice, just a couple of points, would be to give it a go. If you're thinking about it, back yourself. I, you know, never would have thought I, you know, would be here today giving this talk a few years ago, but find someone who can be your advocate, who can support you when, you know, you're not sure, because there will be periods where, you know, you think, who am I to be applying for this, or I'm not going to stand a chance, or get in a, you know, Google black hole looking at other applicants and think that you could never compare next to them, but you can. So finding someone external who can back you throughout the process, I think, is really important. As Professor Evans and Stan have said, I think the process is really valuable. So, you know, regardless of the outcome, taking that time to kind of step out of your busy life and think about your vision and what motivates you is a really valuable thing to do, and you have nothing to lose by doing that. There's plenty of resources available for applying for the scholarship online, and Stan's already showed you a lot of the helpful contacts. Professor Elwood is lovely. I speak to students each year who are interested in applying, and I would be very happy to talk to you. I'll put my email in the chat afterward. For me, the most time-consuming part was probably the personal statement. It's something that you can't get help with, you can't show anyone, and it's a very individual process. And that part especially, I think you kind of need, you know, a few days to lock yourself away or be out in nature or wherever you can kind of stop and think for a bit. And have a backup plan about other pathways you might pursue to reach, you know, what you want to do. But I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. I think you have us all wishing we could go to Oxford. Both you and Stan just captured how exciting a place is, but that idea of rowing in the cold is not very tempting when you're from Brisbane, is it? Anyway, thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, we have run out of time, so I will encourage you all to reach out again to both Beth and Stan. Beth is wonderful with you know, the generosity, again, that fabulous community we have that are so willing to offer any help. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we can reach out and still share those with you. And I will also say that our new Dr. Peter Binks, who is our, oh no, I've forgotten, is it PVC? It's not PVC. Vice President of Engagement is here as well, and he would be very happy to have chats with you and share insights. But now let's move across then, and we've got Alexandra here, who's she is the Scholarships and the Alumni Manager from the John Monash Scholarships Program. So thank you very much, Alexandra. And you already have your camera on, and if you can turn your mic on, that would be great. Now, I will say again that this is a new session. We are talking about the John Monash Scholarship, and this section will be recorded and available as well, so thank you.
Thanks, Victoria, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. I am...
Yes, you're clear.
Wonderful. As Victoria mentioned, I'm Alexandra. I just want to say a big thanks to the team at Griffith for putting on today's session. It's so great to see this level of support and engagement with these opportunities for both students and staff at Griffith. And I hope that everyone who's attended today gets something out of the session. To echo what's been said by some of my fellow presenters, I think that there's such value to this. To these experiences. Just applying gives you such an opportunity to really reflect and refine your goals for the future, and thinking about, I guess, that trajectory you could be on, and how it might mean that you contribute in the future. So I'm here today to talk to you about the John Monash Scholarships, and following my little presentation, we'll have one of our 2021 scholars who's also a Griffith alumni, Emily Regis, who'll be joining us. To give a bit of a chat as well from her perspective of having applied, and I guess the journey she's on now. She'll be going off to complete her study later this year, and we'll get to chat a little bit about, I guess, what it's been like since being awarded the scholarship, as well as that process of going through the application and interviews last year, and perhaps any tips that she might be able to share with you on that experience. So a little bit of history about the John Monash Foundation. We were founded in 2001, with the first scholarships being awarded for study that commenced in 2004. And as of the most recent cohort, our 2021 scholars, we now have 215 wonderful Australian leaders who are doing really outstanding work in their various disciplines. I guess a few things about our scholarships. Obviously, we're named for a great Australian leader, General Sir John Monash, and we look to support Australians to undertake their postgraduate study overseas, with the idea of fostering leadership networks and research and capabilities for Australia's future. So we're uniquely Australian in that we're offered to Australian graduates with leadership capabilities who are looking to sort of, I guess, develop their career trajectory through this postgraduate study for the benefit of Australia. We're open to applicants of all fields of endeavour, and if you have a look at the scholars on our website, you'll see the diversity of disciplines that they're all working in, and you can have a bit of a read of their bios. And we're also not restricted by age or where you'd like to study overseas. It can be at any institution as long as it's overseas, and we encourage applicants to focus on the best place in the world for you to complete the study that you're proposing. So I'm not sure what's going on with my slides here. It looks like they've sort of stretched out a little bit, but anyway, we'll power through. So our key selection criteria and what we're looking for, and also some eligibility requirements. Definitely encourage you to have a quick scan over the eligibility requirements of all scholarships before you jump into completing applications. For us, we're looking for Australian citizens who have completed or will have completed, by the time they take up the study that they're proposing for this scholarship, a degree from an Australian institution, and you need to be planning to start a postgraduate degree, either a master's or a PhD, at an overseas institution the year after you apply and are selected. So that's just to say that if you apply in the round that's opening on the 1st of May this year and closes on the 14th of July, that means you need to be planning on starting either a master's or PhD overseas in 2022. And what we're looking for in our selection criteria is excellence within your field, demonstrated leadership ability or leadership potential, a vision which will be of benefit to Australia, or a vision of how you
plan on contributing to Australia, and a study proposal and career plan that evidences how you plan on sort of working towards this contribution that you'd like to make in the future. So the scholarship financially is 70,000 Australian dollars per year for up to 3 years of study. And the up to 3 years really depends on the length of your postgraduate degree. So if you're looking at a 1, 2 or 3 year postgraduate degree, so the 3 years most commonly refers to a PhD, and then the 1 and 2 years refers to various master's degrees. And we measure that 3 years or 1, 2 or 3 years depending on the length of that degree at a full-time study load. And there's a bit of detail there about how the funding can be used. Most commonly, it's used on tuition, and then of course it could be also used on living expenses, insurance and other expenses in support of the study. We encourage our scholars and very much support them with seeking additional sources of income to cover any additional expenses. That being said, you can't hold our scholarship concurrently with either a Rhodes or a Fulbright or other prestigious scholarships that match the funding. However, there are other types of funding that you are eligible for, and we certainly help our scholars in applying for those as well. And of course, outside of the financial aspect, there's access to the foundation network of alumni and extended community of our supporters and our selection panelists and our board. There's access to this network that's for the rest of your life. Which includes lifelong support, mentoring, opportunities to collaborate with your fellow scholars, professional development. We host ongoing events that are sort of designed to bring our scholars together. Sorry, Victoria, I'll just power through the last little bit there and pass over to Emily. We host a lot of events that facilitate bringing our scholars together, essentially, around the world and also back in Australia. There's also a bit of information there about affiliate agreements we have with a few institutions abroad. Perhaps if you're interested in any of those institutions for your postgrad study, you could reach out to have a chat with me directly. Information about the application and selection process is also available on our website. The most important thing to keep in mind at this stage is the applications open on the 1st of May and will be open until the 14th of July. We then have 2 rounds of interviews. The online application process, again, there's lots of detail about this on our website, so feel free to jump on there and really have a thorough look through of everything. I'll also put my details up in the chat and at the end of this presentation so that you can always reach out to have a conversation with me as well. I would encourage you to think about when you delve into these applications just how, I guess, as other colleagues have said, how you can use this as an opportunity to sort of really refine and think about your goals for the future. Not wanting to run too far over time, and certainly don't want to take any time away from our wonderful scholar Emily, who has joined us for the session. I'd like to hand over to her. She's a 2021 Judith Neilson Foundation John Monash Scholar who's looking to do her PhD, or will be doing her PhD later this year at the University of Amsterdam. Emily, if you want to jump on, it'd be great if we could hear a little bit about, I guess, your experience applying, what it was like, any tips you have for everyone, and of course, I suppose, a little bit about what it's been like to be a part of that foundation community over these past few months. Over to you.
Alexandra, did you want to just speak for a minute or two while Emily comes back in?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just sort of jumping back into that, the content a little bit about the application, if that's all right, or I can go into a bit of detail about Emily's very impressive bio, which everyone can see up on the screen at the moment. It'll be great to hear a little bit about I guess, her plans for when she goes over to Amsterdam, and what she plans.
Yeah, great. Emily, would you like to put on your microphone again and your camera?
Yeah, can you hear me and see me now? I'm sorry.
We can hear you and we can see you. Great.
Excellent. I'm sorry. I started talking to myself for a little while then. So are you happy, Alex, if I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump on in.
Excellent. So today, firstly, I'd like to thank you for having me on, but I'd also like to start by talking about exactly why I wanted to apply for this scholarship. So a few years ago, I was a helicopter trauma retrieval nurse, and I was also doing some fixed wing disaster work. And I found myself in the middle of a disaster zone, sitting in the jungle of Vanuatu, surrounded by a whole bunch of people who'd been in a terrible accident. And when I looked down at my patient, I knew two things. I knew that all the hard work, all the resilience, all of the things that I'd put and effort that I'd put into my career had come to this point. But I also knew that I could do better and that we could do better for women in disasters. So it pushed me to start thinking about how I can promote women and promote empowerment for women within a disaster to try and improve processes. And for me, the best way to do that was to do my PhD, but to do it through a scholarship so that then I'd get the full breadth of opportunity that a scholarship like the Sir John Monash gives you. So I started looking around and thinking about which scholarships I would like to apply for. And the Sir John Monash really stuck out to me, and that was on a number of reasons. Firstly, he is one of the greatest leaders that Australia has ever had. He comes from a really amazing background where his parents were immigrants that came to Australia, and he was from a minority at the time within Australia, and then he went on to become a war hero. And the way he led the troops, it is still today something that we acknowledge as an amazing leadership skill. So for me, I was really interested in being part of a scholarship program that was going to teach me and mentor me to be a generational leader and somebody who, within my field, people will be able to look up to and also be able to learn from. And that's what the whole process of the Sir John Monash Scholarship is like. So I started off by choosing the scholarship, and then I wanted to know where could I actually go to learn more about women, more about gender, and understand equality at a much greater and more in-depth process. And this is why I love the Sir John Monash Scholarship so much. So for me, you get to choose anywhere in the world that you want to go that applies to what you're learning. So I chose the University of Amsterdam, and the reason I chose it are a number of reasons. Firstly, they have an incredible gender and social science group. They do some incredible work where they look at global health problems and they find sustainable solutions to them. But the thing as well with Amsterdam as a city is it is considered one of the most progressive and equal cities in the world. And for me to understand equality, I needed to be part of equality. And I really believe that I'll have that opportunity when I go there. So I then went on and I effectively found my institution that I wanted to do, but I wanted to be as successful in this application process as I could be. So what I recommend for everybody to do is to grab a book and have that book carrying around with you at all times. Every time you go to coffee, every time you talk to anybody, write down your ideas. Write down the words that come to you when you think about who you are as a person and what you want to do. So you've got a whole list of things there so that you can come back to them and think about them and really understand you as a person and who you would be as a leader. I then started cold calling people. And as Victoria knows, because I cold called her, I'm happy to get on the phone or get onto emails and contact as many people to get as much advice as I possibly can. And I can't recommend that enough. It is something that I put a lot of time and effort and networking into. But it meant that I got a really well-rounded understanding of the questions that would be asked, the expectations that would be on me. But it also meant that I gained mentors who were willing to be part of my process and help me along the way. For me, these were some of the biggest tips. I did mock interviews. I thought about what I would wear, and it would make me the most comfortable during the process, because you know, we all get hot and sweaty and scared during these things, and I thought about that a lot. I also really thought about what would happen if I didn't get this scholarship. How would I feel? And you know what, for me, I knew that I had put so much effort and so much time into this application, and I'd built on all of the things that I'd learned as a helicopter nurse, all of the sleepless nights and all of the processes and protocols, that if I didn't get this scholarship, I'd be okay. But the thing that really made it okay was how kind the process is. And that's something that I really want to finish up on, and is talking about the kindness of this process. The Sir John Monash Scholarship process has to be one of the most empathetic, understanding, and innovative processes I've ever been through. It meant that I got to know who I am as a person, but it also meant that I got so much feedback from the Sir John Monash team throughout every aspect of the process that I could then reflect, learn from it, and try and do better through the next step. So I can't encourage people enough. This is something that has unbelievably changed my life, and I am so excited to get to Amsterdam and to start looking at better ways that we can improve health inequalities for women, particularly within a climate-related disaster. So thank you again. Victoria, would you like me to hand over to you?
That would be fantastic, Emily. Look, that was just beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because your insights about the process and what it takes, and from working with people who have applied over a number of years now, that really you need to immerse yourself. You need to have as many conversations as you can possibly have with people and really understand your why. And you do that so beautifully. I love the book idea too. I'll take that one with me. But with that, a big thank you to Alexandra and to you, Emily, again. And I will reiterate that Emily, as you can hear, is absolutely there for you to share her experiences, insights. Now, with that, I'm going to hand over to Naomi Spinks. And Naomi's from the Ramsay Postgraduate Scholarship, and she's the coordinator here in Australia. This is actually a new scholarship, so I'm very excited to hand over to Naomi to talk about this scholarship. So we don't obviously have a recipient because this is the first year. So Naomi, can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, they can.
Thank you. So I just wanted to begin by saying thank you to Victoria and Kim and everyone who was involved in organising today's very special event, and all of the speakers so far. It's been very inspiring to hear about all of the scholarship opportunities for everyone. So my name's Naomi Spinks. I'm the Ramsay Postgraduate Scholarship Coordinator, and as Victoria mentioned, this is our inaugural year, so it's all very exciting. And today I'll just share what exactly the postgraduate scholarships are, who can apply, and what successful candidates look like. So the Ramsay Postgraduate Scholarships are for high achieving candidates who have been accepted into a graduate program abroad at a world leading university, and they're valued at up to $85,000 per annum. The scholarships have been made available through the generosity of Mr. Paul Ramsay, who was a leading Australian businessman and philanthropist. He wanted to support outstanding young Australians, our future leaders, to undertake graduate study overseas. Paul Ramsay was known as a man for others, who wanted to give back to his country and fellow Australians. He was profoundly grateful for his life opportunities and often reflected on the influences that had shaped Australia. He saw our nation as one of many that had benefited from being a part of a long continuum of Western civilization, In particular, he wanted younger Australians to appreciate and value this heritage and to take the lead in passing it on to others. And we have two main scholarships available. The World University's Ramsay Postgraduate Scholarship, which is $85,000 per annum, and the St. John's College Annapolis Master of Arts in Liberal Arts Scholarship and Washington, D.C. Internship Program, which is $67,000 per annum. And applicants will need to be Australian citizens or permanent residents and have secured a place in a graduate program abroad before finalising their application. And from 2022, up to 25 scholarships a year will be offered, with the majority being in the World University's category. The scholarships cover living, tuition fees, and other related expenses. Now, here we go. So the World University scholarships are available for young Australians who wish to undertake graduate study at the world's best universities. So for example, this could be at Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, Harvard, Princeton, Bologna, just to name a few. Scholars will need to have secured a place in a graduate program before finalising their applications. And for the 2022 offering, applications will close on March 31 in 2022. And these World University scholarships are valued at $85,000 per annum for 1, 2, and in select cases, 3 years of graduate coursework and or research. The scholarships aren't limited to a particular field of study. However, they're not intended for any undergraduate study or medical research or postdoctoral research or any other kind of research appointment. So I'll just move on. So we have the second category, which is the St. John's College Annapolis Scholarship, which is available for up to 6 Australians per year to undertake a Master of Arts in the Liberal Arts, or the MALA, at St. John's, which focuses on great books of the Western canon. Scholars will also participate in an internship program in an area of interest in Washington, D.C. And scholars will be assigned a mentor to assist them in securing an internship within their own unique areas of interest. And some of the opportunities include an internship at an embassy, a museum, a cultural institution, even in defence, security, politics, law, or at a think tank, for example. And St. John's is located in Annapolis. It's an idyllic seaside colonial city founded in 1649, and it's the capital of the state of Maryland and the original capital of the US. The MALA is organised into 5 semester-long segments, which are politics and science, history, philosophy and theology, literature, and mathematics and natural science. However, scholars can choose to graduate with a special focus on just one of the segments. And all of the classes at St. John's have 20 or fewer students, which is to nurture a collaborative learning environment, which creates space for every voice around the table to listen and to be heard. So this scholarship would be ideal for anyone who'd like to gain a great books education at graduate level. So how does one get a Ramsay scholarship? Ramsay scholars will be selected based on strength of character, their leadership qualities, their commitment to serve others in addition to an outstanding academic achievement, and a commitment also to advancing a richer and deeper understanding of our civilization. Advancing a richer and deeper understanding of our civilization might be through the study of its history, its philosophy, the legal and political systems, its religion, literature and languages, science and social sciences, music, art or architecture, just to name a few key areas of study. The key dates for 2022. So from now up until the end of December, this is the time to reach out to us, to send an email to postgrad@ramsaycentre.org to start a conversation with us about what you're planning to study and where you're planning to study. And we pride ourselves on the very personalised approach we take to every inquiry that comes through. So respond to all emails and answer all questions as they arise. And then from September through to January, this will be the time to commence and finalise your application for overseas study with the institution or institutions of your choice. And then our application portal will be open from the 1st of February right up until the 31st of March in 2022. And I must also mention that applications will also be considered from students who have already commenced graduate studies abroad by the time of the 2022 scholarship round. And so that's all from me. I might just move on and open the floor up for any questions that anyone might have, or if Victoria, I might hand over to Victoria.
There's one question there, which is for the Ramsay Scholarship. Can you please clarify what counts as medical research as it's excluded?
Right. So essentially, the scholarships will be for a postgraduate program, which means that they won't necessarily be for any research appointments. So, for example, if someone is going over and doing medical research but not attaining a particular award at the end of that research, that doesn't count as a postgraduate program.
Okay, thank you.
I think.
Are there undergraduate scholarships available too?
So in Australia, yes, there are undergraduate scholarships available, but the postgraduate scholarships are just for study outside of Australia.
Okay, Naomi, we're going to have to wrap it up there. So thank you very much for sharing that. I've learned a lot about the program, and I might follow up myself with you and have some more conversations with you so that I can give a little bit more support to our community here. There is another question in the chat. If you wouldn't mind responding to that in the chat, please, Naomi, that would be great. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next session, this is my session that I'm going to talk about where I have the expertise in it. So it is the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, and it is for undergraduates exclusively, this one. So I am the International Liaison Officer for Griffith University just for the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, not for the New Colombo Plan Mobility. They're quite different programs. So what is the New Colombo Plan Scholarship? Okay, well, it was set up by DFAT, so it's an Australian federal government initiative, and it is about really increasing involvement of Australians in programs overseas. So it's a soft diplomacy initiative that was set up around about 10 years or so ago. Griffith is amazingly successful with the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, and you might have heard the Vice-Chancellor early mention that we had 9 last year, and we had 9 in the previous year. Now, each university can nominate just 10 of these, 10 students for these. So it is about people to people. So it's called the New Colombo Plan because there was a previous Colombo Plan one which brought students from the Indo-Pacific area to Australia to study. And Julie Bishop recognised that there was a need really for young Australians who are the best and brightest to go overseas and come to understand what it is to live and work in the Indo-Pacific area. So it is highly prestigious. Like if you've been listening in with all of the other sessions of today, it really focuses on high achieving students who are also going to be the exceptional leaders of the future. So what the program entails is that you can do an internship. You might do 1 or 2 internships. You also must be able to have credit for the courses that you study overseas back to your degree here. It must credit back. So there are 3 bits: the internship, the second bit is the study component, and then there's also a language component that you can do overseas. So the minimum is about 6 months, but you can do 19 months, and Grace, who's going to follow on from me in a couple of minutes' time, Grace, I think, stayed for around about 19 months, and that's quite typical when students go. So they give out around about 120 of these a year. As I mentioned, every university must nominate just 10 students. So Griffith can nominate 10. However, we are able to nominate +3, which are also for Indigenous students, and that the age group for those students is up to 35 years. So this is the eligibility. You must be nominated by your home university, and those nominations are closing in just a month's time. You must be an Australian citizenship. So of course this is about gaining international experience. So for those students who are international students coming to Australia, you are already gaining those cross-cultural kind of experiences. So that's why this program is really focused just on Australian citizens, because it's wanting our Australian citizens to go overseas and gain some insights and that cross-cultural capabilities. You must be enrolled. Now it is classed as full-time, however that's 75% is classed as full-time, and you must be in an onshore campus in not an Australian university overseas. You must be between the ages of 18 and 28 years by January 2022. You must be undertaking at least 1 bachelor degree, or you can do a bachelor honours degree program overseas, and many students do decide to do that. You need a minimum of 70% credit points, so that's about a GPA of say 5.5. You do need a strong academic record, so 5.8 would be really quite a minimum, because it is quite competitive to get into. And not a recipient of prestigious of previous New Colombo Plan scholarship. So key dates, as say 10 students, it's by 24th of May 2021, so that's just under a month's time. So the eligibility, we ask you that you put in a response which is using the selection criteria that is there. Then we have to nominate by the 21st of July, and all nominants must have their nominations in by the 18th of August. So it's very, very tight timeline. So if you want more information, please go to DFAT for the New Colombo Plan. As I said, this is not the mobility program, it is the scholarship program. And often DFAT is a little bit out of date with the information they do supply in their online platform, but I encourage you still to have a look, because it doesn't really differ from year to year. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Grace Manahan to share her insights and experiences of applying and being, more importantly, a New Colombo Plan scholar.
Thanks very much, Victoria. So I was fortunate enough to receive the New Colombo Plan scholarship. Prior to that, I did the mobility program, which took me to Tokyo in Japan, where I worked with INPEX Corporation, which is oil and gas, for those unfamiliar, and I was in the legal team there. In Singapore, I did spend the full 19 months there, thinking I'd only originally go for about 9. I picked Singapore for a number of reasons. I was interested in its role in the region in terms of connecting Australia to the region from a professional services point of view. So I started with PwC in a strategy consulting role. I then moved to the National Uni of Singapore, where I studied at their law school, which was definitely the foundation of why I chose Singapore. They have a fantastic law school that has a lot of international law subjects that aren't offered at Griffith, and at this time, 2018, when I started my program, Belt and Road Initiative was really a hot topic, and I could do mega infrastructure subjects that were relevant to perhaps the way my career was heading at that time. Finally, I interned with King & Wood Mallesons, which is an Australian Chinese law firm who I currently work for. I am still in my final year of study, so I'm due to graduate this year, but the scholarship has allowed me to sort of fast track professional and personal growth and really hit the ground running in terms of exposure. I studied Chinese while I was over there. Certainly language, I say this every time I speak about this program, language and extracurricular activities such as sport, travel, etc., are a really great way to meet people. I find as an exchange student, as you're often referred to over there, which is, you know, fair, essentially that is what you are, you're there for a short period of time. There's sort of a transient status that attaches to you in that people aren't really necessarily wanting to invest a lot of time in you until they realize you do fit under this umbrella of a slightly more transformative program. You know, you have the backing of DFAT, you're sort of there for a purpose. So having the New Colombo Plan scholarship as a sort of legitimizer in the region was just extremely helpful. I actually did a Griffith Asia Institute webinar on this last July with some colleagues, so I'll put the link in that, in which we spoke about the program at length. Otherwise, in terms of applying, this program is slightly different to some of the scholarships we've heard about tonight, that at that next step in your career and your vision and your narrative for where you want to go, you can be a bit more nascent in this, in that we don't necessarily, DFAT doesn't expect you to be as, you know, well-rounded in terms of what your career might look like, but there is that necessity for a passion and an understanding of why you want to go and why one of the 40-odd countries that you're applying for in Asia, or the Indo-Pacific more accurately, should be your host location. So again, there will be some time for quiet reflection, soul searching, in order to articulate your passions and, you know, your strengths that will meet the objectives of this program. But it's certainly achievable from early stages of undergraduates. There are some formal requirements which you can find online, but you can apply very early in your program, and you don't have to have done a million things to be successful. You just need to have that drive. So Victoria, if I hand over to you to take any questions that we might have. I can see one from Keely.
Thank you, Grace. That's great. Look, I also want to say that every discipline, the wonderful thing about this program is that really any discipline can go. You do need to go and have a chat to your course coordinator if you're serious about it. So, for example, one of our education students who went, she was initially told, oh, no, you can't have this, it's part of the program, we won't exempt the courses, and she persisted and was exempted. Similarly, we've had a film student who was successful the year before last, and we've got a music student who was also successful. So it really is about exploring your why, and it may be that you need to do it as part of an honours program, but I do encourage you to look into it. It does take time, it does take research. You don't have to know exactly what your program's going to be when you submit, but you do need to have a really clear understanding about what you want to gain. So this program is about future leaders. It's about what your big vision and idea is going to be for the future and the change that you are going to make. So in making your application, do look at the selection criteria. When you put in an expression of interest to us at Griffith on the 24th of May, you need to respond to that. So I encourage you to go and have a talk to Griffith Mobility, go global, and talk about what countries, what program, where you might be able to go. I also have set up a Teams group where we can share information, and Grace and I are more than happy to meet with you and chat to you in a Teams group about what it's all about. So the idea of this session is really just a taster. It's just an overview, and it's not about answering all of your questions that you have about it. So we do have lots that we can share. Okay, Matt, if you're 33, unfortunately you're not able to apply. because it is restricted by age. I actually forced a policy change last year and got it changed to 30, which is about access and diversity. So we did get a change for Indigenous up to 35, but there hasn't been a change, and certainly I'm happy to push that one again for next year maybe. So no, it's not for older students. So any other questions have we got? I think we're probably at time now. So if I move on, does anyone else have another question? I think we're just able to nominate 10, that's correct, Keely, with one that we can do who is up to 30, between 28 and 30, and then 3 Indigenous students are the only. Do you need to be 30 at the time of applying? You can be 30 at the time of planning and you'll be fine, okay? How do we be part of the team chat? Just put your name and the details here and I'll add you into the Teams chat. Do you have any advice on choosing a location? I've got lots of tips, but come to a Teams group and we will share with you about that. Kate, the secret is really researching. Go and find out about what country they're doing great things with your particular course. So Fiji, India, Philippines, Myanmar, there are loads and loads and loads of countries, Vanuatu, that you can go to. If you get online and have a look at the website, there are heaps of countries. It's about you and the why you might go. But if you're serious about applying, I'm really happy to have a chat with you about what it is. It does take time to get that right. So Grace has got, I believe you can't be a dual citizen. That's correct as well. You can't be a dual citizen. Okay, so now I'm going to close up this session and then I'm going to pass over to and introduce our next panel. And this is going to be a really rich session that we have. And please, can I ask that Peter Binks and Ethan Bowering and Elise Stevenson, if you can please all turn your mics on. Actually, thank you, Kim. I haven't shared. There are lots of other scholarships as well. There's the Cambridge Australia Scholarship, with Ethan was successful in. There's also the Gates Cambridge. That is also another fabulous scholarship. So there's quite a number of scholarships. We just gave you a taster of some of the different ones, certainly not all of them, but we have developed a booklet which has more information about scholarships. There is also another one which is the Schwartzman Scholars Program, and one of our students, Caitlin, was very successful with this 2 years ago, and she's now completing hers. So don't think in any way that the scholarship programs that we have shared this evening are the full set. There are many, many, many more. But again, we are here to help you through that process if you are interested in applying. So the next session is looking at, well, what makes a good application? This is challenging and it's different for each of you. So I'm going to introduce the panel now, and of course we are recording this session as well. So the first person on our panel is Dr. Peter Binks. Dr. Binks is a Rhodes Scholar, as well as being on the Rhodes selection panel. He's also involved in the National John Monash Scholarship Selection Panel, and he's been an advisor on the Ramsay Centre Postgrad Scholarship Program itself. So in his corporate experience, as you can see, he's got McKinsey, BHP and Telstra, and he's our new Vice President of Industry and External Engagement at Griffith. Now I'm going to go back and introduce also Elise Stevenson. So Elise is now working for the Policy and Innovation Hub, and she was a 2014 New Colombo Plan Scholar. Elise has also been fabulous with the support that she's given us with New Colombo Plan Scholars and getting you prepared for the scholarship program. The third person on our panel is Ethan Bowering. So Ethan was a 2015 Cambridge Australian AP Platts Scholarship recipient. He's also on the Cambridge Trust, and he is on the CAS, or the Cambridge Australia Scholarship Selection Panel. And so these panelists bring a wealth of insights and experiences. So what makes a strong and persuasive application? And these are a few tips here. So I'm going to go over, we haven't got the questions here, but I'm going to go over and start with Peter Bing. So Peter, the question I have for you is, what do you see writing a persuasive application is, and what is challenging about it? And what are 3 things that people can do to improve their applications?
Thank you, Victoria, and look, thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. An application, let's be really clear about it. Application, the 6 or 10 pages you have to put together will be one of the hardest documents you have to put together in this particular year. It asks you to delve into aspects of your career so far, your future planning for whatever you may do beyond this. It asks you to speculate on how your life would be changed by this particular outcome, and it also delves deeply into how you think about yourself with your personal statement. So let's make it really clear, it's a really, really tough task. So I guess the next thing I would say about it is that the application is typically a forward-looking document. It should not repeat your It should not repeat your CV. Your CV is normally asked for as part of the application process, and there is dense information in that which you don't want to kind of put out again in your application, other than to refer how it built on your strengths. So what the purpose of the application is to tell you or to tell the reviewers why you're applying for the scholarship and what you will do when you're successful with it. It's not meant to be backward looking. So let me come to the 3 things that I would advise about writing an application. The first is write early and review regularly. The guidelines for the applications may already be up on the websites of the scholarships that you're looking for. If not, they'll be up within the next month. My guidance to everyone is to download those and actually start writing as soon as you possibly can, because distilling it into well-structured, pithy statements that have good English and cover all the things you need to do is a process that will probably take you 3 or 4 months. So the idea of leaving the writing of the application to the very last minute while you get your thoughts together is not the way to go. So write early and be prepared to review often. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing, and I speak from the perspective of having reviewed many of these, make sure you answer the question. Each application has 4, 5 or 6 key questions that they're asking. They are phrased very, very carefully to extract information about your leadership capabilities, your successes, your strengths and weaknesses, your ambitions, your study proposal, etc. Read each question very, very clearly and then respond to it, and then at the end check to see that you have answered the question. The most common criticism that a number of reviewers have had when we are reviewing a set of applications will be that person X looked good on paper but didn't address the question, or person X chose to effectively repeat something that was in a previous part of the application in this section where it actually had no relevance at all. So be very disciplined about saying, what is the question that they're asking here and how should I best answer that? So that's the second thing, respond to the question. Third thing is get other people to look at your application, in particular certain sections. So if you've got a study proposal to go and study at Annapolis with the Ramsay scholarships, or at Harvard with the Monash, or at Oxford, take that to someone who knows your study and take that particular section out and get them to have a look at it and give some check on it. The same with your proposals for what you'll do with the scholarship, where it might take you. Get a friend to have a look at that and give a bit of a critique on it. that very much applies to the leadership area. What you'll find is that we tend to be pretty modest. We don't tend to put down all the things that we've done. So a good friend or a sibling would be the kind of person who could say to you, look, you've left out this, which, you know, other people think is really impressive and important, or you skipped over that in one sentence, but you could actually talk a lot more about it, and it would talk more about your leadership. The only bit where you may not choose to do that is the personal statement, which should be regarded as a category in itself. And with that one, you know, you might want to just keep that to yourself or show that to someone who knows you very intimately and really kind of understands the journey that you've been on. The personal statement's a little bit different. So that'd be my guidance. To summarise it briefly, you know, write early, get your words on paper as soon as you can is the first one. Second, make a real effort to understand and respond to the questions that they're posing. And third, get other people to look at and give you input to your application. That's all, Victoria. Happy to handle any questions.
Thank you, Peter. That's great. We might leave questions through to the end. So I'm going to pass over to Ethan now. But first, Elise and Ethan, did you have anything else you wanted to add to what Peter had to say then about how to write 3 things, tips for their application? No. Okay, Ethan, you've got the next question then. So scholarships focus on future leaders. However, evidencing leadership capabilities is always really challenging. So do you have any suggestions?
Thanks, Victoria. So I think, as sort of Peter said, spending the time to really step back and think about what leadership means to you. I think, having read lots of applications, been through the process myself, and also sat on selection panels, I think when you sort of start digging, asking people to dig below the surface, people haven't thought very much beyond sort of traditional examples of leadership. For example, I was on the student council, or I headed this committee, or I'm a volunteer with this, or I'm a tutor, and they're all the really good examples. But what I find brings it all together is a real understanding of what leadership means to you. So is that ethical leadership? Is it, leading from behind? Is it leading by empowering others? Is it a really traditional example of leadership? And I think having that as the narrative that brings all your really good examples of leadership together is really important. And often when I sit on panels and ask questions, I often will actually go, well, what sort of leader are you? What does leadership mean to you? And how do you demonstrate that? And also, how do you intend to demonstrate that into the future? So I think really being clear about that. And I think thinking about leadership as well, about leadership in your field. So that can be about research, the contribution you're making, if you've got any work experience, about that sort of professional. But then there's also sort of some more the traditional leadership around, student committees, volunteering, that sort of things that we traditionally think about leadership in university. But that sort of why, and showing some sort of insight, I think, into and also why leadership is important to you and why you've stood up and been a leader. You don't want to just be, sometimes it might be, in fact, someone's tapped you on the shoulder, you've had a great opportunity, but people aren't sort of looking for, I suppose you can be a reluctant leader to start off with, but they're sort of looking forward to the impact you want to have in your future career. You want to sort of have a drive and an approach that isn't just, you want to be Prime Minister because being the PM's the cool thing to be in the front of the newspaper. There needs to be a little bit more to it, and that could be the truth, but usually people can see through that if there isn't that real sense of genuineness in your drive. So that's probably my top tips. Victoria?
I'm just going to say too that from having read lots and lots and lots of these applications and worked with students on this, leadership I think is one of the most difficult things because people see leadership as a role. And so students routinely will want to take on the role of, I'll be president of a club. Yep. Or I will be a past leader. And I say, well, being a past leader, would you call a tutor or lecturer a leader because they're taking on those roles? No, that's a job. And so we really need to think about what are the actions? How did I step out of my comfort zone and I tried new things that were different from other students within the group? So leadership can be within a team, and you're an assessment task, or it can be at work, but it needs to be very much about actions. And I know, Ethan, you've talked about frameworks before of leadership, which was really, really helpful too, and reflecting on your actions and what impact that has as well.
And I think the benefit of defining leadership means that you can then demonstrate the things that fit with your definition, rather than it having to fit with what the panel thinks is leadership.
Yeah, and so again, people go with servant leadership and say, right, well, I'm a servant, but it's really unpacking that and understanding what does it mean to me, and that's a values thing. So what are your values? What matters to you? And so one of the things I often encourage people to do is to think about, well, what's happening in the media, and why does that upset you so much, and in what way have you stepped up and then done something with that? So leadership, particularly for New Colombo Plan, can be quite a challenging thing to do. Now, Elise and Peter, you'll have ideas about this. Would you like to share some of your ideas on leadership?
Yeah, I was just going to say also that there's an element of leadership being relative to opportunity. So some people will have all kinds of fabulous opportunities to be part of formal leadership roles and other sorts of things. Not everyone will have those opportunities, you know, whether it's from, you know, rural or regional background or any other kind of factor that has meant that you haven't had those same opportunities, but you can still demonstrate leadership, and that's where, you know, you do have to really go beyond what is a formal role. And I'll be very honest, like Victoria, I think if I read that someone's on a student council or something else, I don't really, you know, it makes me sigh. I feel tired reading that, because to me that's not necessarily leadership at all, you know, but rather it could be you grew up in a town where, you know, I don't know, you wrote to the local mayor about plastic straws, and you thought that we should have a new policy, and there's no real role there that you're fulfilling. There's no official title or anything, but it might just be that you saw a problem and you did something about it, and it's you being able to demonstrate that in whatever capacity. So having a bit of a hard think about your leadership and where it might be different or unique too, you know, whereas all of your other competitors are going to be out there and they will be president of the whatever student society, and they will have done volunteering in the community just like you. Well, how are you different, or how would you stand out from them in your leadership? What is unique about your leadership, or something that you've done that is actually quite remarkable? Because we have very myriad interesting lives, but you know, sometimes it's just about thinking about how we would highlight that. Yeah, I like that point, demonstrating initiative as much as leadership, for sure.
I'm also going to add to that too, because I think, and Peter, sorry, I'll get you, but I think that I go back to values again, because working with people, one of the things I observe is that people really don't understand what matters to them in leadership. And I think your heart, your values, your background. So you mentioned your rural, regional background. That doesn't leave you. You know, the rural does not leave you. So in what way has it shaped who you have become and who you need to be as a leader? And I think that's a really important thing, understanding your why, your narrative, and how it's shaped who you are and what matters to you. Peter, over to you.
Oh, look, if you wanted to, look, most of the points have been very well made. If you wanted to get a good kind of silhouette of what good leaders look like, basically look at Ethan Bowering and Elise Stevenson. Look at their profile and see what they've done over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's extraordinary. And what you'll see is that leadership is actually about achieving change. The change might be very small. It might be an area that not many people other look at, or it could be world shaking. But what you need to do is to say, you know, where was I in a situation where something had to be done, and I took on the opportunity and I did it. It doesn't even have to be successful. It can even be something that you say, I saw something there, I didn't achieve what I really wanted to, but yeah, I learned from it and worked from there. But there's some great examples out there and covered by the previous speakers.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, over to Elise. We've got a question for you now. So what do you see makes a compelling personal statement?
Yes, well, gosh, I've got lots of points there, and actually I'll pull up Peter there in terms of, I think, reflection being core to this whole process. Sometimes it's not about who you are or what you've done necessarily, but how you've reflected on that and are able to pull from it and think critically about who you are or what it is that you're bringing to the scholarship. When it comes to the personal statements, though, as it's already been mentioned, they are a little bit distinct from the rest of your application insofar as it's really just asking you to delve deeply into you and some of your motivations. So as Peter's mentioned before, you know, it's not about rehashing your CV or perhaps other elements that you've already talked about, but there are a few things that it's important to get right. And I think that the first is authenticity and being able to kind of be genuine in who you are and be able to show that across paper, because at the end of the day, panelists are going to be reading hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications. You know, what distinguishes one piece of paper from the next? You know, there has to be an authentic human being that stands out from that. So it can't just be a list of who you are. You know, it has to, some thought have to go into that narrative. And you know, I've seen personally, I'm quite a logical person, I think, when I write, so I'm maybe not as engaging in my writing style as, for instance, other people that I've read their applications, and it's very much so a really lovely narrative story. Now, neither's right or wrong, but you do have to find what's authentic to you and kind of fits with how you express yourself. Tied into that is thinking about what is your story. What is that narrative, that overarching thing about you that you're trying to say? So generally, when you're writing an application, you know, let's say there's 5 different criteria sections that you have to answer independently. Don't just think about answering them independently. You also have to think about how each section builds on the other and weaves a story throughout, so that by the time that they get down to the personal statement, you have, you know, you can really bring it home and that this is why me. Tied into that, you know, distinction. What actually sets you apart? Why you? And I say this because often, I mean, scholarships like this, they get the absolute cream of the crop applying for them. To a degree, they will achieve their goals no matter whom they give the scholarship to. So you have to be able to convince the panel why you. Why is it that you in particular will stand out above and beyond the rest and ensure that you can kind of actually achieve their goals? And so as much as a personal statement is about you, it is really important to be writing it with the scholarship goals and kind of values and everything in mind, because you have to be able to talk to the awards committee, who is also thinking about that criteria in the back of their heads. So how do you tie you back into the scholarship aims? Again, we are also very complex humans, and this is probably a point that I really struggle with when writing applications, and trust me, I've written far more than I've been awarded. Sometimes you have to narrow down who you are as an individual in order to present a cohesive narrative. Sometimes, you know, if you have built out this entire application and then all of a sudden in the personal statement you mention something really left field, you might actually draw attention away from kind of your core message about who you are and your application, and leave the scholarship committee actually thinking, what on earth was that about? You know, so sometimes it's better to have a kind of a defined pitch to who you are than to explore every facet of your human diversity, because we are very diverse creatures, but we have to present kind of a concerted narrative for the panel. So don't say it all. Make sure you tap into some of those motivations, and I think that, you know, being able to tell a bit of a story in that way, like why are you, where have you come from, where are you going, why are you doing this, why have you even written this? Some of those elements will evidently kind of flow through, and that kind of final overarching part is, you know, if you can do this, and keep in mind, you know, that the end is, you know, this section is all about making you a human, so that at the end of the day, and you know, sometimes you can think about this as a branding opportunity almost, and I you know, people have mixed feelings about personal branding, but when the scholarship committee has finished reading your application, how do they think of you? Do you stand out as a human on the page they remember? You know, in my case, I think for many of the things that I've applied for, and particularly for the New Colombo Plan, I think At that time, I was the only one studying gender, and I'd put that and made that part of my branding. And so, you know, I heard the scholarship committee refer to me as that women's leadership girl, right? It doesn't sound great, but when you're thinking about it, what will make them remember you when it comes to shortlisting 10 or 20 people? Why will they remember you specifically? So have something about you that is unique, distinct, and, you know, authentic, I suppose. A lot of advice, but worth giving it a go to and reading it, of course, and iterating as you go.
Fabulous, Elise. Peter, Ethan, would either of you like to share something about that personal statement?
Yeah, I think just echoing about the authenticity, and I think linking back to what Peter said right at the beginning, it does take a lot of time to write that. And I think it's really clear if you get to interview, if there's not much substance sitting behind some of your claims. I think, you know, for all the lawyers in the room, unfortunately, there are a lot of lawyers that apply for these things. And so thinking about, as Elise said, like what sets you apart, and like not just that, a lot of other sort of fields of study where there's probably a lot of applicants. I think really being clear why you're doing something, and it isn't always obvious, like something could be really clear to you, but just really thinking through, so I want to be an associate to High Court judge, why? Like I think really testing some of these assumptions that like are really common for fields in your field as like a standard of excellence, it can sometimes be clear, and I know I have this trouble as well, whether you're going for something because it's the nice, shiny next thing to do, or you're going for something because it actually really aligns with your journey and where you want to get. And I think just thinking about that, because it actually really comes through in the interview if there's not a real clear motivation for why you want to do something.
Totally agree with what Ethan's said there. The reader and the reviewer can actually see that stuff. If you're just looking for the prestige and if you're looking for the shiny thing, then that's not a motivation to give someone a scholarship. It's when they've got a purpose and they are really seeking to do something important and exciting for the world, and that comes out in their personal statement, in their application. That's the kind of thing that reviewers like. Shai asked a question about the kind of depth of experience or that might be there, and it's probably worth making the comment that, you know, lots of us and lots of the people on this call will have undergone severe trauma at various stages and had some really challenging stuff in their life, and that is important because it does shape what you are and should be part of a personal statement in some way. But just be careful about going too far with that. You don't get a scholarship on the basis of the trauma that you've experienced. You get a scholarship on the basis of what you have learnt from a situation like that and how that has strengthened you and repositioned you and allowed you to move forward. So in response to Shai's question, if your life has been shaped by an outstanding trauma or situation like that, just think with discretion about how to position that. Don't overdo the tragedy if that's the main part of it, but come through with something that said, yes, I went through some extraordinarily tough times and this is what I learned from it. This is how it shaped me to the person that I am today.
Thank you, Peter. That was a brilliant point to finish on. And I'm going to say just one thing too about that sometimes people avoid saying things. And so I've met with lots of people about this, and you're going, there's something missing here. And so if there's something, as Peter said, if it's a major thing that's shaped you, it needs to be there. Don't hide it, but don't get bogged in going into all of the detail because it's surface. People are respectful. They don't want to know the detail. But sometimes if it's really shaped who you are, they do need to know. So don't hide the big secrets because, again, panels can see that there's something missing in the story, that there's gaps. So with that, a huge thank you to all of you. This is always my favourite bit. I love hearing your insights and things about how to write a really good application. And I think that this has relevance for job applications. It has relevance for everything in our lives, that understanding who we are. So all of you are interested in applying for different types of scholarships. So I encourage you really to do some serious soul searching, because that's what this does take. Understanding who you are, why you're applying, what the scholarship is, where you want to go, and don't follow, I would say get out of if everyone's in that puddle, get out of the puddle, find out who you are and be individual, because if they're all lawyers going on the same trajectory, you're unlikely to be successful. So a very, very big thank you. This recording is going to be available for everyone. And so thank you to the panel. Thank you for all of us, our fantastic presenters. Now I'm going to do a huge thank you to Kim and the team from Griffith Honours College, because this is always a really, really big undertaking to get this up and going, and they've put a huge amount of work in. So thank you very much for that. Remember, we are here. If you have questions, I'm here. I can help to connect you in with other people like the wonderful Ethan, the wonderful Elise. Now we've got the wonderful Peter. We've got lots of wonderful people at Griffith who will be there to assist you and support you through this process. So, but the secret really for you is to start researching. Research, 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 research. Every week, every day, continue on. So thank you very much, and we look forward to supporting you in the future. Goodbye.